Every 2 years, we truly have a national election when every seat in the House of Representatives is up for grabs. And so all the folks are saying this could spell trouble this year for the Democratic Party and the administration of President Barack Obama. Well, one person sitting with us today, he knows full well what is happening with Democrats in the House. He is the Majority Whip from South Carolina, Congressman James Clyburn. Welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you so much for having me back.
In fact, you were actually on our first show in season 1, and here you're back on our first show in season 2.
Absolutely. Make me feel important.
And I'm quite sure that when we have season 3, you want to come back as a Majority Whip.
That's exactly right, and that's my plan.
So let's talk about that. But folks are suggesting that very difficult terrain. Republicans are gaining a foothold. You see these Tea Party candidates there. What is the Democrats' path to victory to maintaining the House as well as the Senate?
Well, you're right. The terrain is very difficult. The environment is very toxic. But let me tell you something. Your view of where we are depends upon whether or not you will stop at the headlines. If you read the headlines, we got no chance. If you go beneath the headlines, read the stories, go district by district, go where I've been for the last 2 weeks, in about 14 congressional districts. And I'll tell you, our candidates are very upbeat. They're very well connected to their constituents. And I do believe that tradition will hold, but we will hold the House and the Senate in this election. I'm convinced of that.
Polling data shows, though, there's a huge enthusiasm gap between Democrats and Republicans. I've been talking to black political operatives. They say the Democratic Party, the Democratic Governors Association, the DCCC, the Senatorial Committee, they're not putting enough money in the black community to getting people out on the streets. We're also hearing the same thing from Latinos. You talk about young voters and women. And so from a strategy standpoint, how do you drive that when those numbers are much lower than folks are saying they are?
Well, the fact of the matter is, Democratic voters do not engage in campaigning during the month of August. What you've been seeing has been activities surrounding August. Labor Day is now behind us. Our voters now have their children back in school. They didn't realize that big $5,500 per pupil for Pell Grants was in that education bill. They were thinking they were not going to have enough money because Pell Grants were destined to be a maximum of $2,000 per student. Now they see the historical black colleges and universities getting this big infusion, $1.6 billion. And these schools have got students coming from everywhere. So they're very upbeat, and they're now becoming engaged. And I saw the last number, they were down to this 5-point gap, saying that among people who are registered to vote, Democrats are leading by 3. Among people who are planning to vote, we trail by 2. That's 5 points. I guarantee you, over the next 3 weeks, not only will we make up that 5 points, I think we're going to go on to victory on November 2nd.
TARP still very, it causes problems when it comes to voters. They still are upset by it. Stimulus bill, the president touts that as being able to stem the tide of the job erosion in the country. We also talk about health care as well. Yeah, critical bills still seen as, frankly, not the best thing by a significant number of voters, although other folks say they do believe over the long term it will help. And right. So what is the Democratic message? Are you offering that, look, we passed these comprehensive bills, but how do you gain traction with those bills when they are still so torn, if you will, to the average voter?
I would hope that all the Democrats are doing exactly what I'm doing. I'm not talking about how much these things cost. I am talking about the benefit that families are getting from this. When we say that on September 23rd, your child born with diabetes can no longer be denied health insurance, that you can now keep your children on your own policy until they're 26 years old. You can no longer lose your benefits when you get chronically ill. That's what I'm talking about, folks, about. When I got elected, your child born with diabetes could be kicked off his insurance. Because of this bill that President Obama signed into law, That's no longer the case. So that's the thing we're going to have to do. We have to emphasize the benefits of what we did and stop getting hung up on trying to defend the cost.
You said, I don't want to talk about the cost, but you have people who are so focused on the deficit. They say jobs are number one, deficit number two. That's what the Tea Party folks are riding. Christine O'Donnell wins in Delaware. Strange things have happened in this campaign. Alvin Green wins Democratic primary in your particular state. Are you not concerned or afraid that this enthusiasm and this anger with the Tea Party may fuel independents to go that route and put you guys in the majority? In the minority.
I'm concerned about it, but here's the thing. Nobody gets up in the morning and says, what's the deficit projected to be today? They are getting up in the morning wondering whether or not I've got a job that I can keep or a job that I can get. That's where we got to put the focus. We can't let them talk about this deficit, though the deficit is now projected much lower than it was projected to be a month ago. And so I believe that we're in a very good place. We just cannot let that echo chamber that they've become so good at overcome our message.
Last question. We talked about this. We'll talk about it later in the show. Senator Glenn McConnell from your state, the Republican Senate leader. We have a photo of him that was shown at some Republican meeting. That's the photo there. He's dressed in a Confederate uniform with a couple of African Americans dressed up as slaves. I mean, when you see that, a political leader in your home state, what do you say?
I'm very, very disappointed in that. I know Senator McConnell, and I know of his love for the Civil War, but I also know that I always thought it was historical, as my love is for history. Very, very unfortunate. Irrespective of what that couple will say, I think somebody stop thinking.
All right. We certainly appreciate it. Majority Whip Jim Clyburn. Always a pleasure having you here. Be sure to come back.
Thank you, buddy.
All right, thanks a bunch. Folks, still to come, the Tea Party is out to smash its mostly all-white image. News One's Smokey Fontaine is up next with that story and more.